obviously I wanted to be respectful, but like at the same time I was like, I'm really sorry, but this is not working. And so I did have to have that conversation and be like, hey, I'm not gonna go to school anymore. And it was bad. There was like probably like a 6-month time when we didn't have a very good relationship because he was pissed off, and for good reasons.
So guys, I'm sitting down with Daniel Fickle. I am super excited. Daniel's been one of my biggest inspirations for the work that I've created, the cinematic looks. I mean, if you don't follow Daniel, you should definitely check him out on Instagram because the work he does is insane. So thank you so much, Daniel, for joining me today.
Dude, thanks for having me, and same to you, man. Your work's insane, so I have to be here.
Well, thank you. That means a ton. So I would love for you to tell the people a little bit more about who you are and what it is that you do.
Yeah, I would say above all, I'm just more of a filmmaker. I started off like kind of doing everything, and through like the past 10 years, I've kind of fallen more into the role of like a director and editor, and really just kind of fell into like more adventure type work. And so shooting like a lot of some moto stuff, a lot of clothing campaigns, and working with brands from 100%, Fjallraven, Bespoke Post, which is like working with like Esquire, and just like a lot of like a variety of different kind of brands, and it's been a really cool process. Also like doing a lot of documentary work on the side as well, so that's also like an area that I've kind of dived into. And then kind of in between that is working on like little narrative projects, so that's kind of more or less my history there.
Oh, that's so cool, man. So as you've built up your career as a filmmaker, take me back to a little bit about where you started and what got you interested in filmmaking.
Yeah, I grew up in a small town in Colorado, and it wasn't like super far from like civilization by any means, but I was kind of like nestled into like this small town and grew up with like llamas and horses and just kind of out there. And so for me, like, I think I was just so curious about other things, and I think curiosity is probably the biggest play in my whole career, is that I was just curious about the entire rest of the world. By watching movies growing up, that's what really kicked it off. And so initially it was from just watching films from the US, from Hollywood, but also just beyond, watching foreign films as like a younger kid. And then as I grew older, skateboarding kind of like just took over my life for several years during when I was like 13, and then that allowed me to kind of just dive into like a whole variety of different cultures, because you're just out there on the streets and running around with your friends, and it just kind of opened my eyes towards doing something that was like a little bit more freeing, and also allowed me to like just kind of feed my curiosity. So, and that's kind of when I picked up a camera and started shooting, and then it just kind of kept going after that. And so when I was like 18, like moved out, went to college, and didn't last super long. Made it through like a year and a half or something like that. And I was going for film, but it just didn't click with me. I just was like so uninterested. And so I kind of fell out of that pretty quick. And so during that whole process, I met this dude who was like a producer working on Hallmark movies out in LA. And so I just was like, all right, I'm gonna like, whatever I'm doing right now, it's not working. So I'm just gonna try to do something totally new. And so I went out to LA and worked on Hallmark films for a little bit. And I was just doing, you know, all the dirt work. I was just like a PA, and through that, even though I didn't stick around super long there, it was like, it just really opened my eyes in terms of like how the whole process works. And I knew that there was, even though I wasn't enjoying that specific project or job, I knew that there was something like totally there that I could like really learn from and like take back with me and go to, you know, kind of just do it on my own. So that's kind of where my whole career was born.
That's crazy. So what kind of turned you off from the whole film school? Because like most people would say, okay, that's the way to go. Like if you want to get into the industry, if you want to become an industry professional, like what kind of turned you off from that?
That's a good question. I don't really know how to answer it. It just never felt right. I think I like to learn by doing and like really seeing things actually happen. And so being such a visual learner, like school was like kind of full of a lot of bullshit, to be honest. And I think that, you know, there's some great schools out there, and like I'm not trying to talk on that by any means, but for me, I just wanted to really live like what it was truly like and see the real thing happen. And so I think by me being like the bottom of the food chain in LA working at Hallmark movies, it really just kind of opened my eyes, and I'm like, okay, this is actually how it's happening. And that just like hit me way harder than I think, you know, taking tests and doing these things that I just never even really cared about, even in high school or middle school or before then. So I just kind of sucked at school, I guess, in general. So
yeah, no, I know. It's so interesting because there's a lot of people that are book smart, but I think society as a whole is kind of realizing that there are so many different styles of learning now, and not every person fits this mold of, okay, you gotta like pound them with the books, you gotta go through like all the psychology, you gotta go through like everything that has to do with like what was previous knowledge. And I mean, like for some people that is the way to go, because I mean, you know, you need your degree to get into like certain fields of film, but you know, just going out and doing it, it obviously, as you said, it opened up your eyes. Did you believe that school was gonna be the only way to make it as a filmmaker? Is that why you ultimately went?
honestly, it was like school was, you know, something that was pressed on by my parents, and I was fortunate enough for them to like wanna, you know, help me out by paying for school and all that. And so to me, I was like, okay, I should do this. Like I'm fortunate enough to like be able to go to college and not have an insane amount of debt by the time I'm done. But I just like, it was so fast that I realized during school, I was like, no, I'm sorry, but this is not gonna work. So it took a while to really bring that on my dad and, you know, tell my parents like, hey, I'm sorry, but I'm not gonna do this anymore. Yeah, so it was a little rough because I mean, they were so generous to like do that and help me like, you know, really build. But like I just, there was something in me that I was just like, there's no way I'm gonna keep doing this. So I had to just take a risk and just see what else was out there. And yeah, I mean, I'm thankful I did. Like, I wish that I could have, like, if I enjoyed school, like that would be awesome. And I think it's a great thing, but it just really wasn't working for me personally, so.
I would love to really kind of dive into this conversation that you had with your parents, because I think that there's a lot of people that are going through something very similar to school's not working out for me, the creative journey's for me, but school isn't. And you know, maybe they had parents that are allowing them to go to school by paying their way, or they might just feel that their parents want them to go. Maybe they are paying their own way, but it's like, this is ultimately the direction that I want to go. And we're realizing now that YouTube, online courses, different mediums like that are actually teaching us a lot about the creative journey. And you know what? School isn't always the way to go. And so for these people that are looking to maybe get out of school and have this conversation with the parents, I would just love you to share your story of what that was and how you kind of approached that.
Yeah, I mean, to give you context, like my dad did not start off in a family that was, you know, well off by any means, and grew up in a poor neighborhood in Chicago. And so by his path, which was more so like kind of business, school was like exactly what he knew he wanted to do. He figured that's how we would be able to kind of get out of where he grew up and do things that were much bigger than, you know, his lifestyle and his family's. I understood that, and I knew that was like, this was a big deal. And so obviously I wanted to be respectful, but like at the same time I was like, I'm really sorry, but this is not working. And so I did have to have that conversation and be like, hey, I'm not gonna go to school anymore. And it was bad. I mean, it was a pretty conversation, honestly. So there was probably like a 6-month time when we didn't have a very good relationship because he was pissed off, and for good reasons. But that kind of like fueled me to just like push a little harder, because I was like, okay, like I made this decision, and so like I just got to follow through with it. And so I really started like working my ass off and hustling, and not necessarily just to like, you know, tell my parents, hey, I did this, but that was some extra fuel. Like, okay, I need to at least like make sure that like they know that my decision wasn't just me being a total fuck up. And it was just kind of like a little extra push that I had to like give myself to make sure that, you know, my decision wasn't a total and complete failure. So I don't know if that answered your question very well, but
No, it did. I mean,
I think it's gonna be tough, honestly. I think it's gonna be a really tough conversation. But if you like strongly believe in a path that you want to go down, then I think you just gotta take that risk, because I mean, what else are you gonna do?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, just go to school, hate school for X amount of years, possibly if you hate school, not get anything out of it. You're wasting your parents' money. Ultimately, you're wasting your time in which you could be building up your portfolio, you could be building up your career as a freelancer. You kind of have to like look at the two paths and say, which one would I like the most? After that time, what was the turning point in which you and your dad began to have a little bit of a better relationship where things kind of turned, where they had seen a bit of success for you and your career?
Yeah. So I was pretty sick of like the Hallmark movies, and so I left, and I took on some other jobs. I mean, I went back to Colorado. I was growing weed because it was like right around the time when like medicinal was like really hitting the state, and I was like working like a restaurant job. I was still like I was not making it happen, but what it did allow me to do was like these jobs that I hated. I didn't like growing weed. I still love cooking to this day, but I don't want to be working in a restaurant. Those kind of things also kind of fueled me to like just push even harder. And so through that, like I was just saving up money to buy a camera and just start like making stuff myself. And really, that's what really like kind of things started to really shift, is just making relationships. And I think that's like the biggest part about this whole industry. It's just like a personal, like relationship based. And so I was just like so hungry to like work, but also realized pretty quickly like, oh, like building relationships is going to be like the biggest value here. And so I just started working for like small little brands and like little nonprofits, little tech startups, anything I could like really do. And to me, like it was great because I was creating, but it was also like, oh, this is great because like I can also practice my, you know, what I'm trying to do in life. And even if it's a project that was like total dog shit and like I didn't enjoy it, like still it was so beneficial because it allowed me to like get out of my element and like realize, okay, this is their goal, like how do I use my skills to like really accomplish that in terms of what they're looking for. So it was really hard, it was difficult, but it's exactly what I needed. And so after doing those for like a year, I was like starting to like make money, and I was able to quit my jobs. And that's when my dad was like, all right, I get it now. Like, that's cool. You figured it out. You got your own path. I'm excited for you. And it was much better after that, so.
So it's kind of like when you began to prove that this was a viable career for you, like that was kind of when things started to change.
Totally. And fortunately, like I think I was just lucky enough that that's when like DSLRs were like a huge hit, and it was kind of like taking over like the video side of things. And so they were cheap, like I was able to buy it pretty easily, you know, and technology at that time, that moment of time, was like just couldn't have been like better for me, because I just got really lucky in that sense. So
how many years ago was that?
Let's see, I was like 11 years ago.
Really?
So I was like,
okay.
I was around like 20 years old or something like that.
Yeah, that would have been around like when the Canon 5, what
Canon
was it?
5D
Was it
Mark
the 5D? Yeah.
5D Mark II, that was my first camera.
That was like revolutionary, eh?
Dude, it was so good, yeah. And it worked out really well.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's really cool. I think that gives people a lot of insight, because realizing that, you know, your parents ultimately want the best for you. As you had said, you know, your dad had come from a position of having nothing to working up to something and being able to support his family. And, you know, he just didn't want you to see you going back to the place that he once was, you know, when he built you and your family to a place where, you know, there was stability. It's like, for him, it looked like a step backwards in generations. And, you know, I had difficulty from my parents. You know, they didn't support the journey because they thought there's no money to be made. This is impossible. They just didn't know. And so I think just realizing that our parents ultimately want the best for us, that's mainly why they discourage us. But it's like, you need to pursue what you ultimately want, because that's what's going to fulfill you, make you happy. But along the way, don't get discouraged. Don't get mad at your parents. Just keep your eyes set and like just keep moving forward. And I mean, your story was a really great testament to that.
Yeah, no, I honestly couldn't agree more. You're so right there.
So,
it's scary, I get it. Like I don't have kids myself, but like that would probably scare the shit out of me as well. So, but hey, like you gotta take risks.
Yeah, exactly. you know, as culture begins to evolve, it's like the opportunities begin to evolve as well. And to the older generation, it's like, okay, I don't understand this. And most likely we're going to say the same as we grow up. It's like, okay, like, you know, this whole AI stuff, it's like, I don't really understand it, but it's like one day there will be positions, there will be jobs, there will be different avenues built out of that, and it's gonna be like, what, like, you know, the whole NFT stuff. I don't know if you dove into that, but I don't know anything to do with that. I probably should.
Yeah,
but
a little bit. I tested the waters with it. It was we'll see. Hopefully it'll come kind of resurface again, but right now in the crypto world it's a little bit of a mess. But yeah, I mean, that's so true. Because I mean, can you imagine like us like taking our path, like dropping out of college and then just like trying to enter the film world where it was like those cameras are like, you know, 20 times what a DSLR was. So it just wouldn't have worked. So I think our timing was just really lucky, and
no doubt
with where technology was at that point, and now it's just getting better and better for us. But yeah, it was a little bit of risk and also luck, I would say.
For sure. And I mean, especially at your point in time when you were getting into the industry, it was risky. But the way that content creation has evolved and progressed, every single business in the world needs some form of content for their website or their socials, all kinds of different things. You know, now it's so much more viable than ever before. And so if somebody is looking to pursue this craft or pursue creativity, this is the time, you know. And if people are discouraging you, there is so much evidence to prove that this is a successful route to go.
I agree 100%. Yeah, I'll probably just make this a theme, I guess, but it really is just like all about relationships in my mind. And you know, if you can just kind of keep that up, like it's bound to like treat you well, I guess.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. I mean, I've seen it myself. I can 100% agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, relationships, having an open mind, and then I think just maintaining that curiosity, just always trying to learn or explore new ideas. Like curiosity is such a important, vital part of the process. For sure.
I know we've kind of gone like hyping people up here, but there is definitely downsides to being self-employed, owning your own creative business. And as you and I had talked privately, you know, you had said that you had been in the industry being self-employed for about 9 years now. What would be probably one of the most difficult things of being self-employed? Possibly from the start of your career, maybe where you're at now, or maybe just what you could see for somebody entering the industry that might be something that they really need to hustle on or need to be aware of before they get into this creative journey.
Totally. I would say like stability is probably one of them. I'd say that's a pretty big one. You know, people say like, oh, you're self-employed and like you probably have such a flexible schedule, but I mean, sometimes it's like you'll have like 50 days of just straight working, and then other times you're like, oh shit, I haven't worked in like 2 months. And so like it's a little bit, there's just a lot of risks involved, I guess. And I think I've struggled with that for sure over the last like 10 years or so. But since then I've kind of been able to like realize like, okay, or at least based on like previous years, like, okay, December, January is usually gonna be really slow. So you just kind of gotta like adapt to that and realize like, okay, just keeping it in mind, like, okay, this is when I'm gonna possibly have like a slower, you know, season of the year, and then other times of the year where it's gonna be like just super busy. So I'd say that's like kind of the hard part of it. And I think what I did struggle with was like throughout those 10 years was just having that stability and like making sure that like I wasn't jeopardizing like my financial situation or my time or whatever the case is. But I think that was probably the hardest part for me throughout those years. So.
Yeah, I think it's almost just realizing that for whatever niche you're in, there's going to be busy times and there's going to be slow times. So it's like, embrace the busy times, be excited about those, but it's like, don't beat yourself up when there is slow times, because it's like, that's honestly just a reality of the creative journey. It's just time to build your mental state, build your physical again, just rebuild yourself for the next season that's going to be coming up. So
that's so true. Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to get discouraged and say like, oh my God, I'm never going to get another project again. It's so easy to think that. And I mean, honestly, it still happens to me sometimes too, where I'm like, oh, I didn't win this project, or maybe I lost another one. But really, it's like, that's just how it goes sometimes. And you just gotta like have faith that that's not permanent. It'll pick back up, so.
Yeah, I think some of the slow times that I've embraced, I've said, okay, in the slow time, even though nothing's going on, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the intentionality and I'm just gonna learn. I'm gonna pour in my time to learning and growing my craft and growing my skills, because when else would you have the time to be able to learn like this, right? I think that's
true.
one of the best things that the creative journey affords you, is those busy times and those slow times, because there's no way in the world that you could grow when you have like all these projects that you got to get done, and like it's just like crazy. So those slow times just afford you that ability, right?
So true. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Yeah, it allows you to take on like spec projects or just learn. A lot of times for me, I'll just do something completely different too. Cause I mean, you get burnt out sometimes, you know? So like I'll either read or like go try to like do something completely new, like a new hobby, I guess you could say. But I think that's like, yeah, it's a great time to just like do something completely different, as well as, you know, also be working on your craft and trying new things, experimenting, so.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting you mentioned that. I mean, I get so tied up in like photography, and I absolutely like love photography, and it seems like that's the main thing that I focus on, but like kind of expanding your horizons and doing something that is kind of new, and it has nothing to do with bringing a camera, shooting a camera, like anything, you know, it's just being very mindful of like creating new environments for yourself outside of the set. As you said, you don't get burnt out.
Yeah, I think it kind of like refreshes you in a way, so that when you do pick up the camera again, it's like you feel like you're like ready to go, like you have some new energy added to it, and you can kind of take in like any other perspective that, you know, let's say that you were learning how to get better at dirt biking or something. I don't know, go cook cakes, bake some cakes.
Bake some cakes.
Yeah, bake some cakes. And so like that allows you to kind of like just get your mind off of like how you've been working for the past year or whatever, and just try something new. And I think that there's some cool things that kind of come from your brain from that, I guess.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. So somebody that's going to pursue their creative business full time, there is definitely some characteristics I believe that you need to pursue a full-time creative journey. What are 3 main characteristics that you feel creatives should have going into this journey to determine whether or not it's right for you?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest one is just persistence. You're gonna get so many no's. You'll get denied all the time, and I still do to this day. But just keep going. That's like that's the main, really, I think the biggest one is that despite like getting discouraged when you do hear that word no, like you just have to keep pushing on, because otherwise, if you just feed into just hearing no all the time and get discouraged on yourself, then what's gonna come from that? Like nothing. It'll just kind of fizzle out. So you got to keep that fire alive somehow. You know, if I hear a no, then I'm like, okay, great. Like I have like this week to go do something and, you know, edit something or go shoot something new or just go meet some new people. That's ultimately like, just try to find like a positive in that, because then you can kind of like turn that no into something like way more beautiful, I guess is the kind of the idea. So, I mean, like even if you can, just go on a trip. Like, oh, bummer, like they had these specific dates of production and then they just decided to like turn me down or whatever, award the job to someone else. Like, okay, that's fine. Like I've been wanting to go here for a while. I'm just gonna go do this. You can kind of find a different way to look at it through like those denies, those no's. So to give you 2 more.
I mean, you could almost say that positivity actually is one as well. So I mean, persistence, positivity,
totally,
maybe just
yeah, you're right. Yeah.
One more highlight.
Yeah, one more would be, I think just staying curious, I think would be a good one. And like what I mean by that is that you'll never stop learning, you know? There's so much more that you can continue to invest your time in and really understand. And so I think that's ultimately like what makes you better at what you do anyway. If you weren't creative, if you just decided to, you know, just stay inside your little bubble and continue doing whatever you want to do, like cool, but like honestly, like why not like try doing something completely different you're like, oh, like, you know, that's really interesting. Like for me, like I think like mycology is like really interesting, and so like I just read about that all the time, like and it's like it kind of fuels me to like understand like how the world works in a deeper way. So like, I'm constantly just like, if I'm curious about something, like I'm gonna take the time to like really invest in that, because like, why not? And who knows like if mycology is ever gonna be like a thing in my work necessarily, but I think ultimately just staying curious about whatever it is gonna be a very proper way to be successful and keep pushing on. So.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. One of the best things is like continuing to learn. I know that it can be easy to, I don't know, settle at a certain stage or become complacent. But I mean, when you become complacent, that's when your competition takes over and absolutely destroys you. So.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I mean, honestly, I've let myself do it because I've been jaded before. I've let like cynicism kind of take over, and it's never like gonna like do anything. You're just gonna stay there. So you gotta figure out a way, whether it's like, you know, like I said, trying something new or reading. I think just however you can kind of feel your curiosity will kind of get you out of that state of cynicism and push you on to whatever is next.
So just kind of transitioning, what are some of the ways in which you acquire new clients? How are you going about doing that in your creative business?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of times, like for me, it's just been networking, and it's tough. I mean, like cold calls are always like so hard, and like the success rate of those are really not high. But I think that, let's say like, I mean for me, like I grew up like dirt biking as like a kid. I was never like doing it like competitively or anything, but like I totally loved it. And then I kind of fell out of it, like got into skateboarding and kind of followed this other journey. When I started shooting more moto stuff, I was like, why am I not like doing this like myself? And I kind of felt like a poser about it. And so then I realized like, why not, like I should just at least like invest my own time and like go do this. And so like I've met like friends like doing this kind of stuff. Ultimately, that's kind of helped me like reframe like how I shoot things. And then when I reach back out to people, like I can just go on a ride with someone or whatever the case is. I think that's like a cool way to approach it, is just go hang out with people. And so if you have like similar hobbies, like just go have fun with them, because I think that's like the biggest thing. Like go skate with them, go ride with them, do whatever. And I think just from that, like even if they aren't like the client, who knows like wherever like that could actually take you though, you know? I think that there's just kind of like random relationships that could really sprout into something, whether it's a friend who knows of someone else or whatever. But to me, like it's been all about relationships, and it's been really difficult for me to like do like online marketing or any of that kind of stuff. Ultimately, it's just been like referral and then just like reaching out and like go hang out with some people. And I think that's been a lot more successful on my end, so.
I would 100% agree with you, and it's something that I've kind of been learning more so, is a lot of the connections that I made throughout my creative journey have just been, as you said, going and riding with somebody, going and, you know, shooting them a DM and saying, hey, would you want to collaborate on a project? You know, it's going to be very low key. Like, you know, I just want to go out and shoot some shots and just kind of get something cool from the day. And, you know, most people are so down because it's like, oh, I want something cool for my Instagram. I want something cool for my profile picture that I'm looking to get, or, you know, like there's so much value that you can add for people. And so, I mean, it's a relatively like low barrier to entry, I guess, to getting to connect with a lot of like high level people.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I've had like some like following like the strings of like how I got to where I'm at today. Some of it is just so random, and it's like me just like befriending a random dude at a bar, and I'm like, what? How the did that, all of this come from that? But that's how it works, I think, and that's why I think the whole theme of this conversation is like just being good to people, like, and maintaining like really awesome relationships, because you never know, and that's really what film and photography, that industry is full of. It's just full of relationships, and you don't want to like have a huge ego or, you know, treat someone badly, because it's kind of a small world, honestly. So no matter where you are now, like the internet's gonna follow you around. Like just don't be a dick, I guess. Is the main go have fun with people. Go have fun.
Switching gears kind of and talking about how you personally craft your own shots. I mean, like I said before, if you have not seen Daniel's Instagram page, if you haven't checked out his website, go check it out because this guy does some really masterful stuff. I mean, his color grades are on point, his shots are on point. Just go check out his work. But when it comes to building out the process for your work and building out a project, how do you go about doing that? And that was actually one of the questions that we had got asked on Instagram. How do you go about crafting your process before you get into a project to make sure that your project is going to go very smooth? It's going to look the way that you want as you are editing.
Yeah, good question. For me, like this is a luxury, but I like having time. I like being able to digest something. And the other part of it is really about collaboration to me. Like sometimes I have really ideas, and so like finding people to work with that I think are very creative and like smart, like that's a very important part, is just trying to figure out or is working with someone who is going to offer a different perspective and even like a simple little idea that could like really just make the project so much better. And so that to me is like probably the biggest two things, is just having time to like really sit with it and digest it, and then also just collaborating with people. I think if you want to get into like more detail with the process, I think I'm inspired by like just being in a place and like really feeling it. And so a lot of my work does tend to be like outside. And so I think like when you actually go to that place, like on a, like let's say it's like a tech scout, then you're able to like kind of really like just mentally be there with what you're about to capture. And to me, that's like the tech scout's almost like more of a creative day for me, because I can just really like start to visualize things and like understand like what's possible, what's not. Like, oh, there's no way of it we're gonna get a car through this sand or something, you know? So I think that just being in a place like really like resonates with me and like helps me like really kind of like shape what it's gonna really look like on camera. Other than that, like I think I try to avoid like watching like a lot of stuff, like a lot of other people's work before I shoot. I think I'm easily like influenced when I watch like really amazing work. And like, I don't necessarily want to like be the one that's gonna like copy that, I guess. And so like, I try to stay away from like watching other things that are like too related, and otherwise I'll go do something completely different. Like, I think mainly it's reading. Like reading books is like a huge one for me, because I can kind of pull little moments out of it. It doesn't necessarily have to be the entirety of like the story or whatever I'm reading, but little moments will be like kind of like shift how I look at things, and I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I could kind of carry this idea and transform it visually. And so that doing things that are far different from my world before a project is honestly really beneficial. So
Yeah, all of our creative journeys and our creative minds work so different. We all think in different mediums, and it's realizing that we're not all the same. So just kind of find and really look within yourself as to what's working for you, where you're finding your inspiration to create images that are very true to who you are and true to your creative mind as well.
Totally. I'm curious, like, what your process, like, what's your mindset approaching a new project?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because when I'm preparing for a project, I love to grab a lot of inspiration from places like Behance. I just created a video actually about this, about going on to a website called Shot Deck. It's a website, like where you can find high quality stills from film movies and things like that. And I love to pre-plan. I love to, create storyboards. And I think that's very key. Like, you need to have good creative visual direction before you get into a project. But sometimes, like you said, I love to go visualize the location. I do get creative on the day. I see the spot and it's like, okay, we're gonna go shoot this because I know it's gonna work. So
yeah, dude.
It's being
the intuition
creative.
just kind of kicks in. Yeah. To your point about that, I think that's like the whole prepping situation, doing storyboards. It's like it's all super necessary. I've honestly been bad about it in the past, and I kind of just show up sometimes, but that's not good, especially if you're like directing and like people have no idea what's going on, and like you can't just fully rely on intuition. So I've been trying to get better about it. But I think one thing is like, even if I do create storyboards beforehand, then on the day you at least have this structure and you have a plan. But then if you see something like even better, or someone else like points out a better idea, then boom, you can just go with that, and it's like it'll make the project even better. So I think having the structure, and then on the shoot day, if something's like totally like feeling way better, then like, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna highlight those 2 points. So create structure, but hold it loosely within your hands. Trust your intuition, because your gut feelings are always going to tell you what's going to work better for the project. And, you know, having that prepared, you know, it doesn't leave you completely in the dark, but, you know, just realizing that you have the option to change if your creative intuition would tell you so. So
yeah, you summarized that well, because I think it goes back to like collaboration, because other people might have better ideas than you. And I think taking that in and just listening, I think is a really important thing, because like I said, I'm not gonna have the best ideas. So I think, you know, listening is a really key part of it as well, and just being open to different things.
So something that I believe has grown my personal brand and grown my photography has been spec work and spec ads. I would love to hear your thoughts on if you believe that spec ads are valuable, and if so, then why?
Yeah, spec work has been maybe a little bit different for me. I don't think it's ever directly gotten me a job, but I would say that it works really well in indirect ways. And what I mean by that is you're able to like go to a location that you'd probably maybe never shoot in. Let's say it's like a really small little town that's just kind of dying, but it's like visually very cool. And that could allow you to like really just kind of create something very original. Another aspect of it is like working with people that maybe you typically wouldn't work with in like a more commercial setting, where you have a larger budget and you have to be very careful about how you are using your client's money. Spec ads, you know, allows you to work with someone that maybe you've been really curious about, or whatever the case is, and there's something that cool that really comes from it, whether that's like on like the talent side or, you know, behind the camera. And then I think the other part of it, I think that another part of like how spec ads is so helpful is that it's like you're able to like continue building your aesthetic. And so because you have free reign, you can really just dive into like exploring new ideas, and like just really allowing you to like just flush whatever's coming out of your brain. And so even if it's like not gonna be like something that's purchased, like that spec ad's never gonna get bought, like at least you're creating something that is unique to you and probably unique to a lot of the rest of the world. And I think that that's gonna score you jobs in the future. To me, that's what like spec work really does a good job of doing.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I believe that it opens up like a new world of creative perspective, and it also just kind of allows you to move in a direction creatively that maybe you never thought you would have. So going into the wrap up of our chat, I would just like to hear about where you would like to see yourself within the next 4 to 5 years. If you would like to answer in a different way, what would be one of the clients that you would like to see yourself working with over the next 4 to 5 years?
Yeah, for me, I'm pretty interested in creating films. So like I would love to be in the next 5 years be focused more so on a feature film. And I think commercial work is great, and it still allows you to be able to tell really cool stories and all that. But I think that I've been possessed at an early age by the power of films, like feature films. And so for me, that's what I'd like to be doing. And honestly, I'm very grateful that I haven't done one yet, because I feel like I'm still not ready. I think it's really cool when like, you know, I'm 32 years old, and there's a lot of people who have created feature films at like much younger ages, which I think is amazing. But I think I'm honestly like kind of a slow learner. And so if I were to like, you know, all the stars aligned and was given an opportunity to create a feature film when I was like, let's say 5 years ago, I wouldn't have been ready, and it would have probably been an awful movie. And so I think I'm kind of grateful that that hasn't happened yet. With that said, like now that I'm kind of like, I've been, you know, working towards like defining my aesthetic and like really trying to navigate storytelling visually, I would love to certainly be able to be doing like feature films in like 5 years. And then as far as brands go, like honestly, like I don't really care too much. It's really about like the concept or the story. If it's something that's gonna be like meaningful to me and something really fun and like new, then I'm all for it. But I wouldn't really say that there's like a brand out there that like I'm like dying to work with. It doesn't really matter too much to me, honestly.
Yeah, I honestly look forward to following up with you in the next like 4 to 5 years, and I would love to see you creating your feature film in the process or having created your feature film.
Dude, me too. We'll see. But I mean, hopefully it's sooner than that. Hopefully we can reconnect way before that and do something
100%.
together.
Right on. Well, thank you so much once again for joining me, and I hope that everybody tuning in, if you made it this far in the conversation, you guys got value from this conversation. If you would like me to chat with Daniel again, please leave that in the comments below, and I would just appreciate your feedback, especially within the comments, and we just want to say thank you for you guys supporting me and supporting this podcast and this channel. You guys mean a ton. So thank you once again to Daniel. It was absolutely a pleasure.
Dude, thank you, man. Appreciate your time. Thanks for letting me on there.
Yeah, take care, brother.
All right, you too.